Hey everyone, just a quick reminder that if you're interested in entering our contest to become the next host for Cartoon Conspiracy, we'll still be accepting entries through to July 30th. Just make sure to send us your submission to FrederatorConspiracy@gmail.com. And more information on the contest, like submission guidelines, will be available in the description to this video and probably also linked in a pinned comment underneath this video. Alright, that's enough housekeeping for today. Let's get this started. Man, Edd, Edd and Eddy was a weird-looking show. Now, I'm not saying that to be mean, I actually mean it as a compliment. No other show has been quite able to ride the line between cartoony and doodly as well as this classic from the turn of the millennium. But by far the most distinct part of the show, the character design. Every single character in this show has an instantly recognizable silhouette, and maybe none more so than the smartest of our three heroes, Edd. I think that last sentence worked better in writing than it did in speech. Double D. We're talking about Double D today. Now, throughout the history of film and television, there has been no shortage of questions that were simply left unanswered. Questions like, did the totem fall over? Did Patrick Bateman actually kill anyone? Why does Bob Saget play Ted Mosby in the future? Not to mention a bunch of questions from cartoons. Hey, you can make a YouTube show out of those. But there is one question from Edd, Edd and Eddy that a lot of people have been asking for quite some time now. I'm Jacob with channel Frederator, and today we're going to try to figure out once and for all what exactly is hiding under Double D's hat. So right off the top of my head, the clever jerk in me wants to just say, was the top of his head, and then just call it an episode, but I know that's not a good enough answer. I know that's not what we're looking for. This question, or theory, or whatever you want to call it, is actually more along the lines of, is Double D actually hiding some wacky hairstyle or hideous deformity under his hat? A bit of a sloppy name for a conspiracy, but we can work with it. And that hideous deformity bit might sound like a joke, but the top of Double D's head has been the topic of much heated debate over the years. And there are 1,000,001 guesses as to why Double D is so determined to keep that hat on his head. So we're gonna look at a bunch of them today. But before we can even start on that, it's worth mentioning that back in the before time, there was an Edd, Edd and Eddy browser game on the Cartoon Network website called Lunchroom Rumble, which is a big food fight game thing. It's a mid-2000s Flash game. That's probably the best way I can describe it. And if you win as Double D, his victory pose has him tossing his hat into the air, revealing just a few stringy hairs and nothing else out of the ordinary. Mystery solved, right? Well, not quite. Even though it was featured on the Cartoon Network website, it's generally accepted that this game is not canon to Edd, Edd and Eddy, as the animation company behind the show, aka Cartoon, had no involvement in the development of the game. Also, the fan wiki is very insistent that the game doesn't count. So, I guess it doesn't count. Though if this is still your headcanon, I wouldn't blame you. With that asterisk out of the way, let's first establish everything we know about the situation. Double D always wears his hat sock on his head. And he does this in an active effort to keep this part of his head a secret. As far as we know in the series, Double D has lost his hat at least twice in the series in front of both Edd and Eddy. The first time was in the episode Stop, Look, and Edd, and the other time was in the made-for-TV movie Edd, Edd and Eddy's Big Picture Show. Side note, on the Behind the Edds featurette of the Season 2 DVD, series creator Danny Antonucci said that we would get an answer to this theory if the show got a full-length feature film. I guess a made-for-TV movie wasn't enough and they only met us halfway because they only showed Edd and Eddy's reactions again. How dare you, Danny? Perpetuate this mystery so that people will keep talking about your show for years and allow me to keep my job? Despicable. Anyway, in both cases, after gazing upon the beauty before them, both Edd and Eddy's reactions suggest that there might be something a little strange with Double D. Eddy's reactions to both these events in order were first, "Geez Louise," and then later, "My eyes, they're burning!"
You stop that!
Meanwhile, Edd's first reaction was nothing but, "Cool." And then the second time,
"Does it hurt, Double D?"
Oh, shush!
Their first reactions are admittedly intriguing, but as for their second reactions, since the guys are always taking shots at each other, it's hard to take anything either of them says after that first sighting at face value. Eddy has a tendency to exaggerate for comedic effect, so his reaction could just be him equating seeing Double D's hair to looking directly into the sun. And Edd asking, "Does it hurt?" could actually be speaking to Double D's dignity, or his soul after losing such an integral part of his being. Because truly, Edd was the silver-tongued wordsmith of the gang.
Chasing Phantoms, a dissertation on unifying field theory and its effect on leptons and quasars. By Edwin.
One other thing that we should probably take note of is that Double D is just as vigilant about wearing hats when he's alone as when he's out in public, as is evidenced in the show before with his tendency to sleep with a nightcap. As in like a hat, not like a drink. Well, maybe a drink. Anyway, with this information, it seems like Edward is just as concerned about keeping the top of his head concealed from himself as much as he is with others. Could it be that whatever's underneath could be embarrassing to him? So, now that we know what we know, let's get to the theories themselves. And let's start with the easiest to grasp. A bunch of theories posit that Double D is simply just trying to hide his hairstyle. And guesses as to what this hairstyle could be range from things like being completely bald to having super long hair, not unlike Finn in the early episodes of Adventure Time. Another popular theory is that he has cornrows or some other sort of braided hairstyle, with those 3 protrusions that pop out from underneath his hat as evidence of this. And yet another theory suggests that his hair is just weirdly hat-shaped. How else would Double D's hat apparently have the power to drag Double D along with it, like in the episode A Fistful of Ed? But then there are the more out there theories. For instance, Double D's voice actor Samuel Vincent has joked before that maybe Double D is actually hiding some sort of conjoined twin, kind of like Nurse Gollum from South Park, which that is just horrifying. On the other hand, another popular theory is that Double D is actually trying to conceal some sort of wound or scar. And these theories are only the tip of the iceberg. But unfortunately, since we don't have infinite time, we can't look at every single one of them. But if we closely examine some of the larger overarching theories, like the ones we just suggested, maybe we can come to some conclusions. Could we at least be able to debunk a few ideas? Yes. Yes, we could. But before we get to that extravaganza, if parts of this episode seem vaguely familiar to you, don't worry, that's cool, that's normal. This theory actually has a lot in common with the Bob's Burgers episode we put together a while back about Louise and her hat. And naturally, one could draw parallels between the two characters. For instance, we see a much younger Edward in the episode Every Which Way But Ed, and he appears to be wearing the exact same hat that he wears in the rest of the series. Because of this, as we argued in the Bob's Burgers episode, we could also argue that Double D's hat is actually a comfort object to him. An object he clung to that provided warmth and acted as a comfortable surrogate for his parents' affection when he was a toddler. But this actually probably isn't the case. Not only because Double D wears a different hat to bed, but also because the hat we always see Double D wearing isn't actually the same hat. As cartoon characters do, he actually has an identical hat for every day of the week, as shown in the episode Cleanliness is Next to Edness. So since he doesn't have any particularly strong connection with any specific hat, it's probably fair to say that his hat isn't a comfort object. He's just a stickler for routine, which, yeah, that's pretty in character for him, I'd say. Alright, time for the lightning round. I'm gonna be playing a bit fast and loose with debunking these, but we got a lot of ground to cover, so let's go. First up, is Double D totally bald? No. Boom! Hair. Is Double D balding? Maybe, but that's a wishy-washy answer. Why? Well, okay, let's just assume for now that Double D is balding or just has very little hair, okay? Cool. But you know who else has very little hair? A bunch of characters in this show, including one of Double D's best buds, Eddie. So there wouldn't really be any reason for Double D to be self-conscious about this, and there definitely wouldn't be any reason for Ed or Eddie to make any comment about it because it's super common to them. Also, it's been revealed that Double D wears hairpins, so he probably wouldn't be wearing those unless there was something he could pin those hairpins to. Probably, most likely, hair. Double D's hairpins could also be the answer as to why he and his hat seem to move together as one entity. Instead of just having weird hat-shaped hair, it's probably more likely that a neurotic like Double D would actually pin his hair to his hat. You know, just to ensure that it doesn't blow away in the wind and then reveal his dark secret, or, you know, other such catastrophes. Okay, so pretty much all baldness and balding are off the table. So what about long hair? Well, that is actually probably no good either. Even if Double D pins his hair, we've seen enough images of his partially exposed head. Not the whole thing, obviously, but parts of it. If his hair was unbelievably long, we probably would have seen more of it in these moments rather than just those 3 strands that we've become so familiar with. I know it's not the best argument, but it is more likely that Double D's hair is in the mid-range length, with all of it pinned back with those 3 strands poking out the bottom of his hat, which would still by far give him the longest hair of all of the Eds, so there's that. But wait, what if those hairs are actually cornrows? It would be a unique and unexpected style for Double D to wear, which would explain both Edd and Eddy's reactions when seeing it for the first time. It's also possible that Double D is embarrassed by this hairstyle because his controlling parents force him to keep them for some reason. I mean, it's not like cornrows are a naturally occurring thing. But there is a catch that pretty much removes this from the realm of plausibility. According to this theory, those 3 hairs that stick out the bottom of his hat are supposedly cornrow strands, but they look pretty much identical to Eddy's hairs. Not to mention, in the episode A Boy and His Edd, Double D wears a cap exposing an additional 3 hairs just like both Kevin and Eddy, so this is probably off the table too. Also, thanks to this, we have more points against the super long hair theory as well. Seems like Double D's hair is a normal length after all. Okay, so here's where we are. Being bald or close to bald isn't an extreme enough answer because it's not very viable, and also because it's super commonplace in this show. Incidentally, the not extreme enough label would also eliminate a few other theories, like Double D being blonde. Why would it be worth a shocked comment from his friends if it were something so common? But at the same time, whatever's underneath Double D's hat can't be too weird either. Like, say, a conjoined twin. Because there is at least one other character that's seen the top of Double D's head. And that's Sarah in the episode An Edd Too Many, when she somehow pops up from underneath Double D's hat because, well, it's a cartoon. And yet, she doesn't mention any sort of weirdness. And Sarah, especially in this episode, seems to have issues with boundaries. So if there was something that was super weird, she probably would have mentioned it. So what's possible that also fills all of these prerequisites? Well, as we said before, a very common theory is that Double D is actually hiding some sort of wound or scar tissue on the top of his head. And considering everything that we've eliminated thus far, this is most likely the correct answer. So what evidence do we have for this? Well, very little. That's not to say we have nothing to go on, though. Firstly, it fits our qualifications of strange, but not too strange. Because while a bunch of characters in this show are bald or have very little hair, not a lot of them show any visible scarring. It also explains most of the reactions that Edd and Eddy have when seeing it for the first time. Most young kids probably would think it looked cool. Hell, I would think it looked cool. And Edd is probably just ignorant enough to ask a question like, does it hurt, no matter how old the scar might appear to be? But all of that aside, there's also the matter of what fans have come to call the dodgeball incident. It isn't mentioned much, but in the episode Edd in a Half Shell, Double D is absolutely terrified at the concept of playing dodgeball, falling to the ground screaming,
It's gym class all over again!
And mentioning vivid flashbacks all while grabbing and shielding the top of his head. Now look, I can understand Double D, being the intellectual nerdy type guy that he is, not being super into gym class. But this is an extreme reaction. This has led many fans to believe that there was some sort of incident that occurred while he was playing dodgeball which resulted in whatever happened to the top of his head. So after all of this, we've come to what is our most likely solution. A while back, before the events of the show began, Double D was playing dodgeball blissfully unaware of what was about to happen, after which he got horribly wrecked, possibly leading to him hitting the ground or hitting some other surface pretty hard and cracking his head open as a result. And this is just life experience talking, but it could have been the corner of a brick wall, because those things are killers. Anyway, he was able to get stitches and he was able to make a full recovery, but it led to a bunch of scarring or scar tissue to develop at the top of his head. Afterwards, he took to wearing a hat all the time to cover it up from the other kids of the cul-de-sac as well as himself. But why decide to cover it up? Well, this is where we venture into pure speculation, but it is possible that Double D might see this kind of scarring as a plainly visible sign of weakness. He's a smart guy. He knows that at least physically, he is definitely the weak link of all of the Edds, as well as probably all of the kids in the cul-de-sac. And that's probably not something he would want to be constantly reminded about every time someone asked about his scar or every time he looked into the mirror. And while we are admittedly filling in a lot of gaps here, it does seem like the most plausible theory. However, as we mentioned before, Double D has been wearing this hat ever since he was much younger. In fact, since before he even met both Edd and Eddy, as we see in Every Which Way But Edd, which actually aids this theory. If both Edd and Eddy always knew Double D to wear his hat, then they wouldn't know about the trauma that Double D endured when he was playing dodgeball when he was in kindergarten or first grade or however old he's supposed to be here. And they would definitely be taken aback if they saw that Double D turned out to have a massive scar on his head. And furthermore, it's possible that Double D wearing this hat has just sort of become an unconscious habit of his. But being reminded of why he wears the hat could dredge up some unpleasant childhood memories, leading to the reaction we see him have in Edd and a Half Shell. Okay, so we've taken a look at a bunch of theories today, and while we haven't been able to 100% confirm anything, we have done a pretty decent job of taking some theories, taking them off the table, and zeroing in on some other ones, even if we did venture down speculation road at the end there. But of everything we've examined today, the scarring theory is probably the most plausible. So taking all of this into account, I'm going to have to rate the plausibility of the "is Double D actually hiding some sort of wacky hairstyle and or hideous physical deformity under his hat" conspiracy 4 ludicrously sized jawbreakers out of 5, and it's probably some scarring. But with all that we've talked about here, we've really only scratched the surface with theories about Ed's head. I'm serious, there are so many theories and literal headcanons out there. I've seen more theories about this than probably anything else I've ever talked about on this show. So what do you think Double D is hiding under that hat of his? And which character in the cul-de-sac reminds you the most of your own childhood? I think the character that I related to the most on like a deep spiritual level was probably Plank, obviously. Be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and also if you have any theories you'd like us to examine in a later episode, let us know. Until then, be sure to like this video, and if this is your first time here, don't forget to subscribe to channel Frederator. And don't forget to ring that little bell icon to become part of our notification squad. And remember, Frederator loves you.